Goldman Sachs Senate hearings, one could not help but think Senator Levin and Goldman CEO Lloyd Blankfein were speaking different languages. Levin asking, "Is this right?" Blankfein answering, "What's the difference? It's legal." As financial reform is debated, do the players, Congress and the President, have the knowledge to architect a plan? My guest is Silicon Valley strategy consultant and Forbes columnist Sramana Mitra, and we're discussing her recent article in Forbes, Financial Reform, Legal versus Rights. Sramana, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You write in your article that the finance industry is not to blame for the financial crisis. It's the government who must bear the responsibility for the crisis and behavior witnessed, for example, at Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, I can't say that I know every nuance and detail of the Goldman case, but my just based on high-level observations, I can see that I think Blankfein is right. I think Goldman did operate within the legal framework that they were asked to operate within. And yes, it feels very kind of sleazy what they were doing, and the way, especially the way the Senate and Senator Levin in particular were interrogating Blankfein and the Goldman executives. It felt very sleazy, but it's not. I actually agree with Blankfein that I think they actually did things within the legal framework that the government has set for the finance industry. So if there's something wrong going on, that's the onus of that wrong sits on the government, not on Goldman or the finance industry.
In your article, you mentioned the work of George Soros.
This is highly complicated stuff. Modern financial system is a very complex system, and it's not a good idea for the government to do this on their own. And I'm sure they're not doing this on their own. But my perspective is that instead of prosecuting Wall Street, this needs to be a collaborative process between the government and Wall Street, especially the real, people who have respect and stature in Wall Street. That includes the Buffetts, and the Buffett is not Wall Street, but he has respect of Wall Street. George Soros is somebody who has published a fair amount on the topic. I don't know if you've listened to Soros's lectures at the Central European University. It's on his website. There's a bunch of articles he has published on various different venues, FT and so on and so forth. And I've been researching some of it, and it makes a hell of a lot of sense. It's just practical, pragmatic stuff. And he called this crisis a long time ago, and he has actually figured out some systemic framework that he believes is going to work. So this is a person whose thoughts should be included as we design the next, version of the financial system. Similarly, guys like Blankfein and Jamie Dimon, these guys have been managing big banks and managing this calamity, so to speak. So they must have ideas about how to check this in the future.
In many of Soros's lectures and writings, he talks about bubbles. Can you explain that?
You look at the way they call it, even if you look at the last, just the 10, 11 years, we've seen, two very significant recessions. We've seen the dot-com bubble, then we've seen the subprime crisis and the mortgage bubble. In both cases, some sector basically became too hot. Right? There was over investment and inflation of stock prices and so forth, and then they crashed. So this whole cycle of bubbles, what Soros says is that instead of the market fundamentalists believe that markets tend to move towards equilibrium, his thesis is markets tend to move towards bubble. And I have to say that kind of feels, in my much shorter. Soros is much older man. My experience is a much shorter window of financial history. But even in my short financial history, I've seen two, huge bubbles and two huge crises. So it's like it feels right that I think the tendency, especially because our market is so dominated by speculators, and speculators have such humongous incentives to make these bubbles kind of happen, I think Soros is right that markets tend towards bubbles. So the bubbles need to be checked, because if the bubbles create this kind of, obviously bubbles are followed by busts. And the busts have devastating consequences on the general population around the world. And that's not a healthy situation. This is not a healthy situation. Where we are right now, for the vast majority, 30 million people in America, it's not a healthy situation.
The market spectacularly rewards speculation, and that's not a good thing, is it?
This is what needs to change. So financial reform needs to deal with this. I don't know if you've read my article, Capitalism's Fundamental Flaw, that deals with exactly that and puts the central problem of our modern financial system is the speculators are rewarded vastly over creators. I mean, if you can look at the millions of entrepreneurs out there who have had a hell of a time navigating this crisis, while the speculators are making money when value is created, and they're making money when value is destroyed. No one should make money when value is destroyed.
Sramana, do you think that there's any way to start controlling it?
I'm not an expert in this, so I can't claim that I have the solution. But just as a I guess an intellectually curious person, my suggestion is to look in the direction of taxing speculators at like 90%. The banker bonuses should be taxed much more heavily than anybody else. That will cure it, because all that speculation money will end up with the government, and right now that will help a lot in reducing the deficit.
My guest has been Silicon Valley strategy consultant and Forbes columnist Sramana Mitra. Sramana, thanks for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
This is Scott Drake, and you're watching Annuity News Now.